Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pete from FigLife.com, and today I'm going to show everybody the progress that I've been making on my farm here in Newcastle, California. I'm starting a business called Pig and Fig Orchards, but most people know it as FigLife.com, and it's pretty exciting. I'm going to be growing a bunch of trees in a greenhouse and selling those online. So in order to do that, I need to build a greenhouse. So the first step in that is creating a pad to put the greenhouse on, because I live in a pretty hilly place. This is the foothills of Sierra Nevada mountains here in California. So I've had to go through the process of creating a pad for the greenhouse so that I can then construct that. So it's been quite a process, and I've documented most of that via video and photos. So I'll go ahead and show that to you now. Then FigLife. So one of the first things you're going to do when you're trying to build a greenhouse or plan to build a greenhouse is you got to figure out if you're going to need permits or not, or even if you are supposed to have permits, if you're going to get permits. And so determining if you need permits is one of the first things that you need to do. And in my case, you know, it's going to vary from location to location, but in my case, based on the size of the greenhouse and the property that I was on, I did require a permit for the greenhouse. And sometimes, even though permits are required, people end up not doing permits. You know, it's a lot cheaper and easier not to do permits. But in my case, I wanted to use the greenhouse for a business operation. And so it was important to me to have a legitimate legal greenhouse where I could do my business operation and not be a risk of having it be shut down for some reason. So I decided that I had to get permits for the greenhouse, and that meant that going through that process, I determined that I had to not only get permits for the building, but I also had to get permits for the pad that I was going to place the greenhouse on. And that first permit that I would need would be the grading permit. And for the grading permit, the main submittal that you have for that is going to be the grading plan. And that is a plan, you can see it on the screen here, several pages long, and it just shows all the different cuts and fills that are going to be taking place in order to create whatever it is you're trying to create. In this case, I had an agricultural access road that led up to a pad that the greenhouse is going to be placed on. So this is page 2 here, and this is the main page. It has most of the important information for the grading plan. So towards the bottom, you can see the agricultural access road, and that's a road that comes from the driveway, goes down, works around the septic drain field, and then up to the greenhouse pad. So further to the north, you have the greenhouse pad itself, and you can see on the right side of the pad, or the east side of the pad, that's a cut. And so they're cutting into the hillside on the east, and then they're on the other side, on the west side, as a fill. So they're filling that west side such that you create a flat area that you can build the greenhouse on. Hey everybody, it's mid-August, and I'm just here on my property in Newcastle, California, and just taking sort of like a final look at the field here. The grading permit was finally approved. It took a long time, sort of quite a bit longer than I thought it would. The greenhouse pad's going to be built kind of right behind me here, and over there on that hillside. So I didn't get any video of the grader bringing his tractors in, but I did get these photos. So he had 4 tractors that he brought in. He had this bulldozer. He had a compactor with the big wheel on the front of it. And both the bulldozer and the compactor were pretty large. I guess you figure they got to be pretty large if you're going to be doing grading work like he is. He also had this backhoe type tractor, and there were different attachments that he could put on the arm, at the end of the arm, so he could use a little scooper like he has on in this photo, or he also had some grabbing type tool, and so he used the grabber to move rocks and trees and stuff like that. He also had this steer skid tractor, and he used this primarily to tow the water trailer around. He may have used it for some other things, maybe moving some brush around, but the main thing was moving that watering trailer around. Once he got the equipment into the site, one of the first things he did is he went and he scraped off all the grass that was on the top of the dirt. And he just moved that out of the way, moved it down to the bottom of the hillside, just to get it out of the way. Because when you're doing the compacting and building the pad, apparently that grass material, that organic material on top, is no good. You can't use it as part of the pad. I think because it breaks down over time, or I'm not exactly sure the reason, but you can't use that as part of the pad. And so he just kind of moved that out of the way, scraped it off, and so what you're left with is just the exposed dirt, and from there he's just able to start building the pad without worrying about any of that nasty grass stuff getting in the way. And I got a chicken here. So that took most of the first day. And you can see the bulldozer there working. So at the end of that first day, he had a nice hillside that had been scraped off of all of that grass material on the top. And you can see kind of behind this tractor here that he had also taken that fence out that was in there. And I mentioned that he had marked some electrical cables and water lines and stuff like that. And here you can see some of that markers, and some of those markers, and he had just marked those so that he could be conscious of those as he's grading and try not to hit them. We did disconnect some stuff so that he would, in case he did hit it, it wouldn't damage anything. And you can see here in these photos, he's starting to work on the initial cut, and he's gonna, what this is, I believe this is called the bench cut. And so it's kind of at the base of where the pad is gonna be built, and it's just an initial cut. He's got to get the positioning of it right, and then from there he just builds on top of that until eventually it just turns into the pad. And along with building the pad, he also cut in an access road, and this was just of course this is in fast forward, but this was just a initial take on the access road. He made it much nicer later, but that was just so that he could get his big equipment into the site. So when you're doing the compaction or building the pad, you've got to compact the dirt down really tight. It ends up, when you're done with it, it ends up being really hard. And the way that they do that is they, in addition to using the compaction tractor, is they also are constantly wetting the pad. And so that means when they've got the bulldozer going, when they've got the compactor tractor going, they're also got this water trailer thing being pulled by the skid steer, and they're just dumping a lot of water onto the pad, and that compacts the dirt down really tough. The combination of having the water there to wet the dirt, and then driving over it with these tractors ends up compacting it down really tight. And there was also some engineering personnel that would come out and test the compaction in order to make sure that it was meeting the specified requirements for compaction as they were building the pad. And then, so this is just walking along that access road that was cut in. Again, it was just a real rough sort of initial cut. They refined it later, actually took out some of those fence posts. But this was just so that they could get that big compactor in there, drive the bulldozer in there a little bit better. Actually started driving his pickup truck and stuff down through there. And here you can see that process. They got the skid steer moving along, dumping the water, and then right behind them they got the bulldozer moving through. And then they would kind of alternate once the bulldozer had gone through a few times, maybe bring the compactor through, run it over, get it compacted down really tight. And so, pretty interesting process, but the result of that is you end up with dirt that's just rock hard by the time you're done with it. And the idea there is that over time the pad won't shift. If you're building a greenhouse on top of a pad, you don't want that thing to settle over time because it'll ruin the structure. And so you want that pad to be firm, be compact, and so that's the point of doing that whole process with the water and the compactor and all that. So you can see here they're really they've got that bench cut going, and they're able to now just kind of build on top of that. And so they just end up going back and forth, and they pull the dirt from the top part of the pad, basically making cuts on the upper part. They move that dirt down by where the bench cut is, down on the lower portion, and then they just smooth it out, and then they just kind of compact it over, and they just keep building it up on a slope, pulling from the top, bringing it down, building up on the bottom, wetting as they go. And so it's just this continual process. So once you get that bench cut, if you can get that bench cut where it's supposed to be, then you just have to build it up at the required slope, and the thing just kind of comes together. And that's the importance of having a good grading plan when you start, because you know where you can kind of position, where that first cut is supposed to be, where it'll end up. And then these guys are professionals, so they can sort of look at the hillside as well and sort of understand where the cut should be and what sort of slope they should be using, stuff like that. This is the bulldozer actually taking out a tree stump that was there. There was a tree right there. I only had a couple trees on that hillside, but this was one of them. Took it out pretty easily. That would have been pretty tough for me to get out of there. I'm glad he had that big tractor. Piece of cake. And there's the skid steer with the watering trailer. Put this in fast forward here real quick. Just want to show how wet that dirt is. Look at that. They just soak the dirt. You can see, he said, when they first started wetting it, it would just absorb the water, and it just absorbed lots of water. But as they kept wetting it, eventually it became much easier to wet it, and it would stay wetted for a little while. So you can see how wet that dirt is there. And fortunately, I had that water source down in the basin at the bottom of that valley there. If I had to truck water in for them to build this pad, and that's what would have had to have happened if I didn't have some sort of water source, that could have been pretty expensive. It could have definitely added up. My well, unfortunately, just isn't productive enough to supply that amount of water. It's really just enough for the house. And so again, fortunately I had that creek, and that provided us with plenty of water. And here's my update from day 3. Put all the tractors in a line there. Except this one. All right. There we go. So they cleared this part out the other day, just kind of cut the grass off the top. And looks like they did some more work to it today, kind of flattening it out. There was at least one tree here that was just like a stump, and they took that out. I see there's another tree right up there that they haven't gotten rid of yet. I imagine they'll probably get rid of that here eventually. But what they were doing today was they start at the bottom, and they do a cut at the bottom. I think it's called a bench cut. And then what they do is they just kind of build on top of that bench cut. And so that appears to be what they've done here today. And and you can see how much they did. Quite a bit, really. Plus, they had to get that first cut going, which I imagine is probably a little more difficult than building layers on top of it. So you can see how it's going here, and this is probably the slope I'm going to end up with right here. It's supposed to be 2 feet horizontal for every 1 foot vertical. So that's what that looks like, I guess. And as they grade this, they put water down, so you can see this dirt is kind of moist, and that's because they're putting water down as they're grading it. And the grading consists of moving dirt with a bulldozer and then compacting it down with this machine that has the roller on it. And And then they put the water on it too while they're doing all that. And the water helps compact it real tight. And then there's some tests that they'll be doing. They'll be testing this compaction as they go, just to make sure that that it's tight enough. It's not too loose. This is pretty cool. Look at that. That's looking really nice. So they'll just keep building this up, basically, I think, and until they get to the right height. That marker there with the green flag on it, the yellow-green flag, that's the corner of the pad right there. So you can see they're just going to keep building this up until they get to that point, and that should be where the pad height is at that point, I think. And it'll just be level all the way across. Pretty neat. This is that other tree stump I was talking about. A couple little stumps there. They'll take that out once they get to it, I'm sure. So this is looking really good. I think I mentioned the grader said that he was really happy with the progress today. And it looks like he hasn't run into any rocks or anything, which is always a bit of a risk. You know, sometimes you can run into giant rocks out here, big pieces of granite, and you just can't get through them. And that's always a risk when you're doing this kind of stuff out here in the foothills of Sierra Nevadas. But so far, it doesn't look like he's run into any rock at all. So really good so far. This part up here is going to be cut into, and so they're filling down here, but up here is going to be a cut, and that he hasn't started doing that really yet, I don't think. He'll probably just be, as he cuts it, he'll probably just be pulling that dirt and using that to fill down here, I imagine is probably how he's going to do that. This is another corner of the pad here. This is the northeast corner, and that flag I showed earlier is the southwest corner. Looks like the chickens are enjoying the new dirt here. And come out here and find some bugs. What's going on, Eli? What are you doing? What'd you find? A rock? Yeah, I don't know, bud. So there we go. That's day 3. Good progress. I think, total may take a couple weeks to do this, do all the grading. There'll be a bit of a pause in the progress after that because I've got to order the greenhouse materials, which I'll probably do here in a couple days. And then, it'll be probably 3 to 6 weeks before those materials get here. And obviously I can't construct the greenhouse until the materials are here. So there'll probably be a bit of a pause there, but it'll be good to have the grading done. And also I need to, once the grading's done, I need to seed all this while it's still the dry season. And that way, when the rains do come in the winter or late fall, there's already grass all over this this dirt here that's been exposed from building the pad. So it'll be good. I'll let Mother Nature take its course. Well, Mother Nature. I mean, I'm gonna put seed down, and I'm gonna put straw down, and then I'm gonna water it every day. But nonetheless, the grass will grow, and then I won't have erosion of the pad that I just built. So that's what'll happen after we finish the pad here. So of course this is the compactor machine again, and it's kind of neat when it's running. It actually shakes the ground a little bit. Apparently there were a couple different settings on it, and he was using the setting that shook the ground a little bit less, fortunately, but still a machine to see working. And the weather was actually, this is August, but it was just beautiful weather this time of year. We had some cooler than normal weather. It was like low 90s, high 80s. You can see here the water trailer and the skid steer and the bulldozer. You can see that little arm on the bulldozer, and he uses that to help scrape the sides of the hill in order to make the cuts and put them at the correct angle. So this is my 2,500 gallon storage tank. I actually had this on hand when I started the grading process, so I just used that to store some water. The grading contractor had said he needed 5,000 gallons of water a day, which is quite a bit. But fortunately, I have this 2,500 gallon tank here, and that means that I can just use this creek, which the flow in the creek varies quite a bit, but typically I'm getting at least 100 gallons per minute from the creek. But sometimes much less, sometimes more like 20 gallons per minute. I haven't had it completely stop, but variable flow rate from the creek. But in any case, we can use that little pump over there to pump water from the creek into the tank, and then you have a reservoir of about 2,500 gallons that they can use whenever they need it. Good evening. It's the end of day 6, building the pad for the greenhouse, and they made a lot of good progress today. The last couple days was a little bit slow because the compactor roller tractor had broken down, and it took about a day and a half for them to figure out what the broken piece was and get that repair made. But they made that fix, and they're back in business now. So look at that progress. Wow, really nice. They made a lot of progress today, so that's nice, and it's really starting to look like almost like a finished pad up here. Starting to get closer. Still some work to be done in that back corner, digging that down a little farther. But this is looking pretty good. And I don't see really any rocks at all. So that's pretty impressive. Or wait, maybe this is a rock. That's just some, I don't think that's a rock. That's just some clay or something. I don't know what that is. Yeah, it's not a rock. So this is kind of the upper, it's called the uppermost corner, but the northeastern corner here, kind of looking down. You can see still a little bit of slope to it, but again, making a lot of progress, and I think it won't be too much longer. They'll be getting this thing fine-tuned. Okay, so day 7 is complete, and the pad is really coming together here on the road that goes up to the pad. So look at that. Pretty much, well, not done, but you know, roughed in pretty close. Looks like still a little bit of cut that needs to occur over in this corner over there. But this is pretty cool. This pad just kind of came out of nowhere. So we're really getting close here at this point. Chickens are still out there, but the pad's looking much better. They're really just putting the final touches on it. You can see how smooth it's looking now, how the dimensions are really coming together. And just kind of, again, matter of putting the finishing touches on it. One of the last things that they'll do is do the erosion control sort of features, which involve digging some ditches, putting some rock in, I'm going to put some drainage in. So before that, they'll just kind of smooth it out, make everything look really nice, get rid of these big rocks. It's day 8, and that's about it. Is really, I think, close to being done now. He's just kind of putting on the final touches, getting the elevations correct. This road's starting to look pretty good too. Do you like riding your bike out here?
What?
Is it fun to ride your bike here? Yeah. Look at that. Looks nice. Really cut into that hillside there. It's pretty nice, isn't it?
Look at this. It's shiny. It's like quartz or granite. Is it granite?
I don't know.
It's the countertop.
Yeah, it's probably a little piece of granite.
Shiny.
What do you see there, Eli? Just some dirt. See any gold?
Whoa. That's gonna be waste.
Look at this. We saw a snake. Pretty big. It's about 3 feet long, at least. It's actually a gopher snake, which is a harmless. It's actually a beneficial snake. Takes care of rodents, stuff like that. So I guess the idea is, if you have gopher snakes, makes it less likely you'll have rattlesnakes. So kind of neat to see that. Never seen one before. The grader has basically got this pad built. He's got to do some finishing touches on it. He's got to put in the erosion control features and do a little bit more of the finish work, but it's basically done. He's gone ahead and staked it. You can see the edges of the pad, or what was designed as the pad in the drawings, as these green flags, and then the corners of the actual greenhouse itself have these orange stakes with the green markers on them. So yeah, this is looking good. He's got it all staked out, so everything fits. He's got one of these laser levels So, well, the laser level's not actually on it right now. That's just the tripod. But he does have a laser level that he usually has it on there when he's working. And then he puts a receiver on this pole here. And then that's how he can tell when he's doing the grading whether he's where he, at the right elevation, or whether it should be lower or higher or whatever. So basically that corner there, it's the edge of the pad. There's not a marker over on this side, but that corner there is the edge of the pad. And then this one here is where the greenhouse will end. So the structure itself, the corner will be there. And then there's quite a bit of space here. I left room so that I could potentially expand the greenhouse later if I wanted to, without having to redo the pad, because that's a lot of work. So I figured while I'm creating a pad, I might as well just create it such that it allows me to potentially expand it later. So that's basically what I did. Once he got the pad mostly done, one of the last things he did was fix the access road. So whereas it was initially just cut in pretty rough so that he could get the vehicles in there, once the pad was mostly finished, he went ahead and widened the road out, graded it down real nice so that it had a nice slope to it, and then finally cut in the ditch along the side for water runoff. And you can see how nice this looked when he was done. The slope is just really nice. He put those track marks in it, which really helps with the erosion control. You can put the seed in there, and it in addition to being compacted down, the seeds end up going in those little grooves, and so it ends up helping to grow the grass on the sides of the slope. And then he cut in these ditches here along the edge of the where the cut was, and that catches a lot of that rain when you have big rain events, and it diverts it around the cut to minimize erosion. I also put in this drainage system there to catch the water that would come off the roof of the greenhouse. And then finally there was some ditches that were cut around the roads, and some culvert that was put in. And then once all the grading was done, it was time to get the machines out of there. Had a little trouble getting the big compactor tractor out of there, but they got it out eventually. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is September 13th, and I'm going to do an update on the status of my greenhouse build. We just finished up construction of the greenhouse pad just a couple days ago, and I spent the last 2 days putting some erosion control stuff in place. Basically, put seed down on all the slopes that were cut, and then covered that with straw, and then I've been watering that. So I'll just show you this is the access road here that's been cut in. And it's a little bit easier to see the definition in the road now that I've covered the sides with straw like I did. The straw is just to help the grass grow. I need to sort of I did this late last night and it was dark. So I need to kind of fix that up a little bit. But for the most part, I'm done here. Eventually I'll put, I'm gonna put some gravel in here. This will be a gravel road. But first I need to dig a utility ditch through here. And then there'll be some electrical lines and a gas line that go in here. And so I didn't want to put the gravel in before I dig the utility trench, because that's just gonna mess it all up, mixing dirt with the gravel. So I'm gonna wait on the gravel until I get that utility trench done. This site here is where a well is gonna go. There was a stake, which looks like the grader must have pulled that out the other day, but I'll put that back in. So yeah, there's gonna be a well here, and I had a geologist come out and do a survey. He did some seismoelectrographic surveys of the most of the whole property, and he found that this site right here was the best location for a well. He estimated 5 to 10 gallons per minute, which was more than anywhere else on the site. And so that's where I'm going to dig it, and that should be starting here within the next week or so, hopefully. Got some a ditch going through here. This is sort of the low point, and I got a little culvert that goes underneath, and that's going to run down here to this drainage area, which hopefully eventually will be a pond down there. So continuing on around the corner, this is where the actual greenhouse is going to be. And you can see the hillside here. You can see how much straw and seed I had to put down. It really was a lot. Man, that was a lot of work. But just continue on up here. And then that other hillside, that far hillside, you can see there also just how much of that surface was exposed. And I had to put that straw down. And here we are. So this is the actual pad. This is where the greenhouse is going to go. And yeah, there it is. So that's pretty exciting that we, to basically be done with the pad. I'm not completely done. This was, there was a grading plan that was created in order to submit the grading permit, and that was completed by a civil engineer. So that described how to do it, and then the grader is supposed to do it per the plan. And look, I've got a little, this is an erosion control feature here. So there's just a little ditch that runs around the top, and then as it comes down the hillside here, there's some rock in there to sort of dissipate the flow. And then I've got this is sort of like a French drain. It's actually, I think technically it's a basket drain, but it's just another drainage here. So the greenhouse is going to be on top, and half of the water is on the roof is gonna flow this way, and the other half will flow that way. So stuff that flows that way will just flow off the side, and then the stuff that flows this way will be captured via the gutters and the downspouts into these drainage pipes here. And similarly, any water that would fall, like rain or whatever, especially in the winter, it flows down this hillside. It's going to get captured in this drainage here, and there's a perforated pipe in there, as well as a solid pipe for the gutters, and that just kind of flows. It's on a slope, so that just flows naturally out over, connects in over here and flows out. So those are just kind of some of the last things that we did here. But anyway, yeah, there's a plan that the civil engineer put together. And so, this whole thing is supposed to be created per the plan that the civil engineer put together. And so now that the thing is created, I got to have the civil engineer come back out and basically certify, say, yeah, this is per plan, this is good. And then also, when I was doing this pad, I had to have tests done, compaction tests done. And this ground is actually unbelievably hard. Like, you'd think like, oh, they just filled a bunch of dirt in, they cut the dirt and then they filled, and maybe it's a little soft. Is definitely not soft. It's actually really solid, really hard. And there was another civil engineer that I hired to come in and do compaction testing. And every, I think it was 12 or 18 inches, they had to come in. They had to test the fill, make sure that the compaction was satisfactory. And then those readings, they're going to give me those, and that'll be turned in along with the civil engineer sign off, and then that'll be turned into the county, and then the county has an opportunity to inspect as well, and then finally they will sign it off. So that sign off that the grading was done satisfactorily, that is a prerequisite for getting the actual building construction started. And I'm still working through that building permit process, but it's getting close. That's kind of running in parallel right now with the order of the supplies. I think the supplies are actually going to be the materials going to be take longer, so that'll be the limiting thing. But yeah, this is pretty exciting. I mean, this was really a lot of work and a lot of effort, and you know, it was not an insignificant expense either. You know, the process for creating a pad like this is really, you know, I think it's basically the same. If you know, the process I did is basically the same as if you were doing like a house or something, you know, like this is an engineered, permitted pad. And, so, you know, should definitely hold up. And of course that allows me to do actually the permits for the greenhouse as well. The problem was I couldn't do the permits for the greenhouse unless I also had the permits for the pad. So yeah, it's been quite a process. I know there's just been a number of different, you know, just the permitting process in general can be frustrating. And some things are, you know, legitimately good things to do, and others are just kind of honestly kind of a nuisance. I mean, there were some changes we had to make. One of them was that we had originally had this pad aligned more north-south, and we had a retaining wall that was going to be kind of over in that corner, and that was going to help us with this slope so that we didn't have to cut so far back. And when we went to submit for the permit, the county did not like that there was so much slope up above the retaining wall or landscaping wall. And you know, they said it was a surcharge that was placed upon the wall, which is just a fancy way of saying that there's a horizontal load being placed against that wall from the force of the hillside. You know, all that mass up there on the hillside, which would have required me to do an engineered wall. And yeah, that would have been an additional expense, but then also it would have been a lot of time. You know, you gotta hire a civil engineer to do it, which means, you know, they got to put a proposal together, and you got to arrange payment, get a contract signed, and then they got to actually do the engineered wall. And you know, that could take a couple weeks. And then you got to, once you get all those plans, you got to submit it to the county, get them to sign up, you know, get them to buy off on it. And, you know, that could take, you know, a couple weeks or a month. And so all said and done, you know, you're talking month and a half maybe, just to get this engineered wall put into place. And meanwhile, I'm ready to go, right? Otherwise, everything's ready to go. And so, you know, stuff like that, it's just, we had to work around it. So I actually ended up just rotating the pad a little bit so that it wasn't so much north-south. It was a little bit more like oriented towards, you know, 345 degrees or something like that. Just kind of tweaked it like 15-20 degrees and made it more in line with the contours of the hill, and that reduced the amount of cut that we had to have, so that it basically eliminated the need for the wall. And then, you know, another issue we ran into is there's a requirement where you're not supposed to have more than the footings of the greenhouse are not supposed to bear on more than 12 inches of fill. And so the footings are 36 inches deep, and so basically that meant that the fill could not be more than 48 inches deep. And there was a location where it was like 51 inches. And so that required an additional change. And so, you know, it's just stuff like that. It's just like little stuff. We ran into a septic drain field issue where there was the drain field was fine. The drain field itself was fine, but there was a repair area that we didn't know about, which is basically like a backup drain field. And years ago, you know, for those folks that don't know, when you're doing a drain field, they set up a drain area, but then they also take some soil samples in order to determine where the backup area is going to be. And so we didn't know that there was a backup area kind of in the vicinity of where we were going to put the access road. And so we had to kind of tweak the access road a little bit, kind of route it around. You saw the route it took. It kind of went around that hillside. It was previously going to be a more direct route, but we had to kind of route it around that way due to that septic drain field. And again, I could have worked through that. I could have designated another area as the repair area, the backup area. But then, it's not just a money issue, but it's a time issue. How much time are you losing to get all that set up? Get somebody under contract, get them to go do surveys, get the results back, submit that to the county, get approvals. All that process takes weeks and weeks. So each one of these little things ends up taking, a month and a half to work through. And meanwhile, you could have, 9, 10 of these individual issues, through the course of your project. And now, you're looking at a 1-year delay because you're having to work through all these problems. And so I, partially it's just about trying to find the easiest path forward that, and not, minimizing cost, yes, but also, keeping the timeline of the project on track. And I am hoping to get the greenhouse built here by the end of the calendar year. So I think I'm on track for that too. So we'll see. But getting closer day by day. Get the well in here pretty soon. Building permit should get approved soon. And then once the materials are here, we should be able to get started on the actual building itself. So that'll be exciting. So that's my mid-September update. Again, things are coming along, making progress, and it's exciting to see. It's going to be really exciting to actually see the building itself go up. So that's all for now. Thanks.